But to the left, there is something inherently wrong with America remaining America. That's what their open borders policy is all about.
Joining me now is attorney Emily Compagno and the Daily Caller's editorial director, Vince Colonnese. Good to see you both. Vince, there's nothing wrong with immigration. I married an immigrant. Obviously, you guys have immigrants in your own background, judging from your surnames. The problem is it has to be done with assimilation. That's what it was all about, the immigration in this country. That's why it works so well here, and it hasn't worked so well elsewhere. You have assimilation and you have rule of law, and that's exactly what the Democrats are breaking with. And that's why they don't want America to be what America could be and what it has been.
I'd be a little surprised if a week from now Democrats are still running on this. They will be. The president predicted this. They will be savaged in November if they're going to run on this as an electoral issue. The idea that ICE needs to be gotten rid of entirely, which means immigration enforcement within the United States needs to be removed entirely. And then what happens? What's the effect of that? Well, of course, that's an open border policy, just de facto. You'll have a situation where the country doesn't regulate who's in the country illegally, who doesn't regulate who has to leave, doesn't actually enforce our laws. And by the way, ICE does a whole lot more than just that immigration component. They actually go after drugs. They go after sex trafficking. All of these elements that are meant to keep the country safe. Democrats have a misguided focus on this for any number of reasons, but it's going to hurt them electorally in November if they stay on.
But, Emily, there is the left wing of the party, which seems to be morphing into the mainstream of the Democratic Party, because now you have people like Liz Warren calling for the end of ICE, and they don't want America to be America. They feel guilty about America. The old liberal guilt really exists. I mean, they feel guilty about it. They don't care how they get rid of their guilt, no matter what damage it does to the America that most Americans, I think, love.
I agree with you, and I also think that it does a disservice to the voters and to the population in general by kind of oversimplifying and overgeneralizing all of these issues. So for them to tout a single soundbite or a single photograph or abolish ICE and assume that that platform or that tenet is what will carry through what is an actually extremely complex issue that involves international relations and the push factors that are driving multiple countries worth of immigrants to our southern borders, again, does a disservice that I think will turn around and bite them later, because you can't oversimplify these things. We need to have a more intellectual, intelligent approach, because that's exactly what we already saw in these primaries, where voters basically stood up and said, actually, we are a lot smarter than this. We're a lot more engaged, and it matters more to us than rather having these kind of platitudes coming out of essentially the Democratic establishment.
Yeah. And Vince, you know what it is? It's good old common sense, good old American common sense. You do what works. We just had a former FBI agent talking about how bad the policies of open borders worked in the past, in New York in particular. He was personally familiar with how horrifying some of the situations were. So Americans just use their common sense and realize some things work, some things don't work, and what they're proposing doesn't work.
Well, who's for more people on the welfare net? Who's for more people MS-13 members coming to the country? Who's for more heroin? Who's for more fentanyl? Right. If you're for all of those things, then it would make sense that you're for open borders. But not even Democrats. Look, Democrats are not for any of those things. What they're for is electoral victories, and they see this as an easy route to that, whether it be through amnesty, ultimately for illegal immigrants coming into the United States, making them ultimately Democratic voters, or just to appease a left-wing base that's rabid for them to suspend all borders and call our country a borderless environment. Yeah. It's not going to work out good for America in the long run.
You know, people don't necessarily live and die by their own sword, and we just saw that happen in Germany, where Angela Merkel has decided to pull back from her open borders policy in order to win the next election. I'm just wondering if between now and November, as polls come in and show that Americans don't buy into this open border business that a lot of Democrats are talking about, they will withdraw from that position. They'll try to shut up Liz Warren and other Democrats who are going there and play more to the middle.
I think that's exactly what's going to happen, right? And we've seen that in the past, where this kind of more divisive or extreme rhetoric certainly tones down as we approach an election, or certainly after election, right? But in immigration and in the family separation issues that, again, this has kind of been reduced to, that certainly galvanized much of the voter base. But Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, to me, said it best in terms of the Democratic Party, which is they have forgotten and they have ignored the base. They have taken the working communities for granted. They've taken people of color for granted. And they assume that we're going to buy into their kind of half-step or bland proposals and just take it. And you know what? We are not. So I think it behooves them, again, to bring more complexity before that, but also to tone it down, because it doesn't represent the entirety of their base. It certainly just represents a small faction and, again, oversimplifies the issues facing in a much larger context.
Well, and Vince, the people who now represent the Trump supporters are mostly people that the left used to be able to appeal to, but they don't appeal to them anymore because they didn't like being out of work.
That's right. Well, working class Americans, and by the way, legal immigrants, too, who like Trump, who like the president, who don't want to see illegal immigration happen unfettered and want to see people come in the right way. I think with the Democratic Party specifically, Dick Durbin said in Chicago this weekend, he called ICE agents a group of incompetents. In any other, that's how unimpeachable they feel.
I don't think Americans feel anywhere near that way. Emily and Vince, we've got to leave it at that. Great to see you both. That's it for us tonight. Thanks.